back with Crowdfundr Thunder. I am your host, Leon Barillaro, and I am joined by Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's the Friday, it's sunny, and I get to talk to you about a really, really incredible project, which I am about to ask about, but I would like to remind folks chat that our partner for this week's Crowdfundr Thunder episode is Pandian Games, and thanks to them, if you type exclamation mark way in chat, you will be able to enter to win a dungeon year. So please go ahead and type that in chat if you haven't already. We will be drawing at the end of the last interview. So yeah, with that settled, Chris, hello. Why don't you please give us an introduction to yourself and your project, Self Focuses?
Okay. My name is Chris Legge. I'm a fledgling game designer. Still relatively new. Only been doing this a few years in my spare time. But Soft Focuses is actually something I released before in an earlier edition, about just over a year ago. And the basic premise is it is designed to help instill empathy in someone for, in this particular case, the struggles of living with ADHD. The basic way that occurs is it is a solo journaling game where instead of, and in the new version there are other options for this, but instead of having, you're making a ranger or you're making, some sort of outlaw, you are making a version of yourself that is dealing with these different aspects of being neurodivergent and going through your normal day, but under the lens of how that would interact and how quickly your day is completely different when you have these different things interacting and affecting you.
Yeah, is such an awesome concept, and I'm so intrigued by that, especially as someone who is divergent as well. Something that immediately drew me to this, something that you posted on Twitter about the idea that this has been a useful tool for kind of explaining your experience to people who are either not neurodivergent or don't share similarities to neurodivergence. And I would be super interested in hearing, any like anecdote or anything that you have to share about that, because I really, really love the concept of games as a way to explain perspective.
So the some of the ways that this has been, it's actually, when I released the first one, I kind of expected, I know it's kind of a hard sell for a game because it's not exactly fun, and a lot of times I tried to add in some more fun things in the new version, but the other problem I had was a lot of neurodivergent people want to play it. And as you know, I made the mistake when I was testing it, giving it mostly to my neurodivergent friends. And most of us, myself included, it was hard. It like mentally taxing, draining, not the sort of thing that you want to actively engage with a lot of the time. But when you don't already have ADHD, when you don't have something like that, it's not like doubling up. And so it's not nearly as mentally draining. And when I started like having people test it and putting it out there in the world, I've actually heard from a number of therapists that have been interested in it, and that's been a huge thing for me, that like trying to help parents and loved ones of people who are recently diagnosed with ADHD, or like high school kids that are having troubles and the parents just don't understand, something to help them. I have an acquaintance in the community that has been a huge proponent of the game since we were testing it, and they were telling me that it actually helped them finally get their diagnosis at one point, and that was also just such a massive thing for me. So yeah, that's the response to it has been very heartwarming.
That's fantastic. It's so interesting to me as as someone who is queer and neurodivergent, right? One of the stories that you hear often in tabletop spaces is that, folks will play games and kind of use that as a stepping stone to discover who they are. And I think it's really, really fantastic, that soft focuses can help folks do that from a neurodivergent standpoint.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I set out to do it, because like with D&D and other tabletop games, I tried to explain, like one of my ongoing game groups, I tried to explain to everybody, like, you kind of end up putting something of yourself into every character. You end up, and a lot of the group, like it was their first characters, or they were still relatively new, and they put a lot of themselves into there without even realizing it. And you see that constantly. So I love the idea of being able to use something like that, and that's kind of why I started thinking, hey, I could do something like this.
Yeah. I'm gonna call up your campaign now, because I want to show it off. And I want to ask you, a couple questions about crowdfunding. My first question being, is this your first campaign, or have you done other campaigns before?
No, this is 100% my first campaign. Yeah, I have
Very
not
cool.
even necessarily considered crowdfunding anything, because I do most of the work on this anyway. And I have a lot of artist friends. I have an art background, so my partner is an artist. So when I need art, I work with people I know. So I haven't really had a lot of overhead, because I've done everything digitally up till now. So I haven't really had the need. And then when I thought, I want to make a physical copy of this, that's when I decided, all right, I'll do it. And yeah, it's been a learning experience.
I can imagine. Yeah, just like, it's funny. We were just talking to Jess Markram, who her project Oops All Draculas is also a physical release of a previously digital only game. And I guess I wanted to ask, what's look like? Because I think it's an interesting avenue of raising funds for this specifically, and also telling on myself a little bit. What does it feel like to crowdfund a game that is already complete?
One thing about this, it's not actually fully complete. I still have some stuff I'm testing and working on, because there was a lot that I didn't have in the original version. Right. So I had a lot of like comorbidities and other aspects that I didn't feel I had enough research and experience in to accurately convey. And I'd already sat on a mostly completed game for most of a year before I finally finished it. And I decided I'm going to release this, and then I might release a supplement later. And then as I started doing stuff and researching, and it grew to more than twice the size, and it's become much larger with all the new additions, it kind of became its own thing. And so I was like, no, I'm just going to do this as a second edition. I'm not going to just have like an add-on supplement that has all this. I want to put the time into it. I also never planned for it to be printed, so I didn't have it in a good print format before. So I have to redo all the pages that are from the previous stuff, and there are some modifications and changes in the original text that's still included. Just to kind of little things that I noticed that I wanted to change and edit.
Yeah. Can you actually talk more about like not formatted for printing, as someone who knows absolutely nothing about layouts? Like what are the differences between publishing for PDF and publishing for physical?
There's actually a number, and like I said, I have an art background. Part of my degree was in graphic design, so this is kind of old hat for me in some ways, which takes off some of the pressure. But the differences a lot of times are in, first and foremost, the page layout. If you're doing digital, you can have, whatever size you want, whatever dimensions, whatever size text. You can have stuff right up to the edge of the page because you don't have to worry about cropping. Because when you print, especially something being mass done, you can't guarantee that's, if you've heard the terms bleed and crop, you have to have so much space. And if you're doing something like a perfect bound book or something that doesn't have an easier way to lay flat, you also have to worry about a thing called slug, which is like, you want to make sure you stay far enough in on the middle.
I'm sorry, these are TTRPG monsters. Slug, bleed, these are not real terms.
So yeah, you have to kind of keep things within a certain boundary so a lot of times based on the printer you're using, and it gets complicated, but once you kind of get into the swing of it, it's more intimidating than it sounds more intimidating than it actually is. Once you get into it, it's not that bad.
I see. Well, maybe that isn't the cards for me someday. But no, thank you so much. I think that our viewers are really interested in these types of things, especially because one thing that I've been interested in a lot lately is the different models of crowdfunding and the different ways that folks can use it. And so, I guess my next question is, do you have a recommendation? Like, would you recommend using crowdfunding as an option for a second edition or a re-release? Have you found that this is working out, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. Not fully funded yet, but on our way there. And so far, yeah, it's been, despite the stress of it, it's been a good experience. But that is, I know, mostly me. And especially if you're good at marketing yourself, that does help a lot. That is not something I am good at. So that is also a part of a learning experience of being able to talk about your stuff without feeling like you're being pushy or anything like that. But I do recommend that going through crowdfunding. It has been a really good experience to see people actually committing to funding the game. Yeah. And each time we get someone new adding on, we've had a number of people that have added on additional beyond the actual copy count that they're ordering, and that again is just like feels really good. So I recommend it.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, you heard Chris, everybody. We are 50% of the way there for soft focuses, and hang on, how many days left do we have?
2 weeks exactly.
Weeks exactly. All right, chat. So we're gonna need folks to hop in there and grab a couple copies of soft focuses. Because it's a fantastic game, a wonderful concept. And one thing that I am interested in hearing about, Chris, is you've talked a little bit about, some experiences that your friends, but do you have a moment that you personally is like maybe one of that you've had working on this game?
I have a few. Like I said, I have the one friend/acquaintance that has had a really good response from it. Sending it off to some friends who have had the exact opposite has kind of made me realize, like, oh yeah, I may have actually done this right. Being contacted by therapists is good because, again, it makes me feel like I've actually done it properly. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a computer tech by day, so that's been huge. Recently, especially like during the crowdfunding, the people that have talked about it and the reviews that have kind of come out, Hassan from Hassan's County, and we were in like an IO9 and the Dicebreaker write-up.
Icebreaker.
I almost cried at what they wrote in the Dicebreaker write-up. That was huge for me.
That's awesome.
So
congratulations on that. Yeah. It's so cool to see in ways that, the traditional, sort of stereotype or expectation is. So yeah. Let me see. I don't know if I have really a lot of other questions left, but I'd like to maybe throw it to you and ask, if there's anything that you'd like to add or share with the chat.
Let me think. I think the biggest thing I'd like to say is, even if you're not, even like this is not your thing, you're not you're not neurodivergent, you don't have someone in your life that's neurodivergent, which again is more the target audience, people who have others in their lives that they would need that for. But the overwhelming kind of point of the game for me is empathy. I try and do that. I try and instill things like that in a lot of my games. And this one in particular, this one's like wears it on its sleeve. So just, if you are watching this, try and have some empathy for the people around you and what they're dealing with, what they're going through, because just their day-to-day is going to be so different from yours that you're not always going to know.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. Chat, don't go anywhere because we have two more amazing guests up for you. But thank you so much, Chris, and
thank you.
see y'all soon.